All right, so good morning everyone and welcome to this Leverage Technologies webinar for SAP Business One. I'm James Rodder and the topic for today is mastering item pricing and blanket agreements. Now, most organizations that use SAP Business One would have some pricing requirements and they would need to be set up in the system. And today is a demonstration of all the available options or some of the available options around pricing within SAP Business One. So we're just creating a bit of awareness so you can take this back to your business and see if it can be applied to your own system. Okay, so these are the topics that we're going to cover. So as I was saying, how does SAP Business One handle item pricing? So what we'll do is go through some of the pricing types that are available within SAP. Then we'll go through and configure some of those and set up some conditions around it, so you're aware of what are the parameters or conditions that are required in order to apply these particular types of prices. And then what we'll also talk about is the hierarchy of pricing and how does SAP determine the price on a given document. So with so many pricing mechanisms available within SAP, you need to be aware of how it determines through a hierarchy the final price that will be applied on that document. We'll also talk about blanket agreements. Now, blanket agreements is a very handy tool if you're aware of what it can actually accomplish. Generally, blanket agreements are long-term supply arrangements with either your customers and suppliers. So there's other names a blanket agreement could be called, like a call-off order or a blanket order. There's a number of names of it, but effectively it's a long-term agreement with a business partner, and you can call down on this agreement over a period of time. So I'll go through a couple of examples of that. So before we go into the actual system and demonstrate this, I just wanted to make sure it was probably easier on a slide deck to explain how prices are determined in SAP. So what I'll go through is a typical sales order. Now this applies, the pricing logic or determination is the same on the AR or accounts receivable side and the accounts payable side. But for these examples, I'm just going to use sales. So we have a sales order set up in the system, and there are a few factors that need to be keyed into the order to drive pricing. So the first is the customer, pretty straightforward, and then the date of the document. So generally when you raise a sales order, it would be today, but that's crucial to determine some of the pricing within SAP. From there, we would enter the item, the product, the unit of measure that for that particular item, and then the quantity that the customer would like to purchase from you. So once those 5 factors have been entered into the system will then go through this pricing logic structure or this pricing hierarchy. So the first area the system will look for is, does that customer have any special pricing or not? And if it can't find any special pricing, it will then go down to the next part, the next section of the pricing hierarchy, which is discount groups. And then it will continue in that fashion. So no discount groups, then it'll go to period and volume discounts, which we'll take you through. And then if there's nothing in there, it will go into the price list set up against that customer and then apply that price. So there's 4 areas. There's other areas as well, but to keep things simple for today, we'll go through these 4 areas and show you with some examples how the pricing gets applied and some things to look out for. The other area we were talking about today is blanket agreements. So what a blanket agreement is, it can be a preceding document to a sales order if it was on the sales side of the system. And with there's a number of ways you can configure a blanket agreement, but if it is set up in a particular way, the blanket agreement can completely override the pricing hierarchy that the system has. So we'll go through a couple of examples of that, and then hopefully you'll be able to see how it would work, and then you can go away and understand how it can apply to your business. All right, so what I'll do now is go into SAP Business One, which I have already open, and what I'll go through first is the price list setup in the system. So price list the price list setup is found under the inventory module, price list, and then we have an option here called price list. So it's a pretty straightforward structure at the header level. What we need to set up is, I guess, titles or titles of types of price lists that we have set up. Generally, you'll have price lists aligned to purchasing or accounts payable, and then you'll have price lists aligned to sales and accounts receivable. So I have a few examples set up here. I have one called purchases, so that would be the price list I'd apply to suppliers by default, and then I have for sales price lists, so one called retail, wholesale, and tier 1 and tier 2. And there's a number of ways then you can configure the relationships between price lists. So I've got an example here that the retail price list is the base price for the for the wholesale ones, and then I've also got these factors. So if I have a price of $10 under the retail for a given item, it would then be $9 for standard wholesale because of this factor that I've set up. There's other areas that you can set up when you have this arrangement between a price list and a base price list around rounding. We've also got the ability to house multiple currencies against a single price list. So at the moment, I've got 3 currencies set up: AUD, USD, and Euro. And that allows me just to simplify the setup. Rather than setting up a price list for every currency, I can just set up one price list and give it a title, and then you can apply it to the foreign currency business partners as well. So those are the titles, but then in order to populate the content of these price lists, I can then double click on the price list I want to modify. I have selection criteria to filter the products and items that I'd like to modify or review. I can then go OK, and then I get this structure here. So I have all the items available on the left-hand side based on that selection criteria, and then I have all the pricing and the different currencies. So the first column under primary currency, I have the AUD values, the USD, and the Euro values. So we can have up to 3 currencies up in a price list, and then you can then update this price list either via a Excel spreadsheet import, or there are other tools that are available within the system to then automatically calculate it. There's also an option here called gross price. Now, if this is ticked, then this means that this pricing is inclusive of GST. If that's unticked, it's exclusive of GST or any tax. So something to be wary of if you're B2B or B2C. You might want to consider having that on or off. All right, so the price list is something that needs to be set up. It's a mandatory part of the system, SAP Business One, that needs to be set up before you can start configuring customers or business partners. So that's very important. So from there, I will be going into a customer that I've already got set up called BlueZoom, just to show you the relationship between the customer and that price list. So I have this customer record here, or things that I hope you're familiar with behind a business partner. But what I want to focus on today is just under payment terms, and we have a field called price list. So when we have a customer and we look at that hierarchy, this is that final step in that price determination. And what we have here for BlueZoom is that retail price list. All right, so that's the first thing to consider. So from there, we will look at those other areas of the pricing setup. So the first area that I'll go through now is the special pricing. So that's that first step of the hierarchy. And one method of accessing that is by simply being in the given business partner, right-clicking the business partner, and then you'll have an option here called Special Prices for Business Partners. So this new window opens up, and what we have here are similar to a price list setup, but this is customer-specific pricing over and above that price list. So I have a total of 23 special prices set up for this particular customer, and then I've got different configurations for some of these items. So I'll go through some of them. So if I highlight this one here called Strong Forks 100 millimeters, what we have here is that the price is being compared against. So when I determine a special price, what is the base price that is going to be used? So this one's retail. And then what we're going to apply is a 3% discount. And then the price after discount, it's going to show me here, is going to be that. So that's a fairly straightforward setup. So a percentage discount on a given item. Another option here I've got here for the carbon frame medium is a price list substitution. So again, the default price list for this customer was retail, but for the carbon frame medium, it's going to be substituted to the standard wholesale, and there's going to be no discount over and above that. So we're just switching from price list A to price list B for that given item and customer. We have another option here. So this is again for a carbon frame, but this is small. And there's an option here to specify without price list. So there's not a base price. This is just a net price that's been negotiated with the customer. And we can then just type in the price here of $170. So a number of options of either a discount on the existing price list, substituting the price list, or just having a net price with no reference back to a price list. So there's a few examples there. However, there's a few more bells and whistles, I guess, behind special prices, which we have here. So this first option here, the advanced mountain bike or mountain bike, we have a price list value of $612, and then we have a 1% discount on that. But what else you can do in the system is set up things called period and volume discounts for that given customer. And the way that you access that is, again, a double click on that item, and then this new window opens. So I have this this particular screen, and I start seeing dates, and then other fields which are very similar to what we've already seen. So this is a period discount. So between the 1st of February and the end of February, we're going to give this customer a 3% discount, which then calculates to $593.64. And then in March, we're going to give them a higher discount of 4%, a 4% discount on that advanced mountain bike. So you can set up all these promotional period discounts in the system by just going through to the special prices, then drilling through the item, and then you'll have these screens, this particular window available. But there's another feature available underneath the period discounts. We then have volume discounts. So on the period discount screen, I can then double click on that. And now I have a special prices volume discount. So what this means is that I can apply an additional discount when they purchase over a given quantity. So the unit of measure is each, but then when they buy 10 units of the advanced mountain bike, we're going to give them a 5% discount. And if they buy 50, we have a 10% discount. So a lot of structure and logic that can be behind, set up behind special prices, and it's all available there, and it's all, you know, as long as you know where it lives, you can set it up accordingly for your customer or even your supplier. So this is relevant to both suppliers and customers. So what I'm going to do now is just leave that special prices window open and raise a sales order. For BlueZoom. And we'll go through some of these examples. So if I wanted to apply a price, a product, I can then obviously, if you're familiar with SAP Business One, you can enter the item in. So the first one I'm going to key in is a printer label. Oh, missed it. I'll start that again. Printer label of a quantity of $1 and $6 has come through. And I've also exposed this column called price source. So from the sales order, I can then identify how the system is calculating the price. So this has no special pricing or discount volume, period and volume discounts or discount groups, and it's just gone straight to the price list, an active price list of $6. You can always override a price if you've got the relevant permissions set up in the system. So if I wanted to give them a one-time net price or discount, I can then change that to, say, a 10% discount. And then this field here will update that the price source was a manually determined price. So again, the system's tracking all these sort of things. So a manually determined price, if I type in printer label again, I can have it's been drawn from an active price list. So that's a couple of examples there. So the next one I'll go through is the strong forks that we have on the right here. So when I enter that in, strong forks, I then see that the price of $228 has come through with that 3% discount. And then I have that $221.16 applied to the sales order. And then I have that price source. So again, special prices from business partner is coming through. So it tells me that's that information. The next one we have was the carbon frame. So if I type in the carbon frame, it was the medium. I see that $184 comes through. I hope you can notice through the webinar that these prices, are coming through in blue. So when you see a blue font in SAP Business One, it means that some sort of special pricing has been applied to that particular document, being a sales order in this case. So we have those two examples, and that other example was that carbon frame, small, of $170. Again, that's being pulled from this special price there of $170. The next one we'll go through is the advanced mountain bike. So if I type in advanced now, I see it's come through at $612 with the 3% discount, and it hasn't applied the 1% discount because, again, what overrode that was this period discount. So I see that period discount was 3%, and that's what's been applied to the sales order. But then we also had that a volume discount. So if I then apply the same item again to the sales order, and then I hit that quantity break or volume break of 10, you'll see that the price or the discount increased to 5%. Because if I go back here on the right hand side and drill through, we have a period or a volume discount of 10, which then I'll apply the 5% discount. If I increase this to 50, the 10% discount would then be applied. So we're seeing all that data come through easily onto the sales order, no user intervention, the calculations are happening behind the scenes. One thing to watch out for, which I've set up under the alloy frame. So we've got an alloy frame here, small, and we have a 4% discount behind that item. So when I apply alloy frame, and it's a small, we see that it's a 2% discount. All right, so what's happening here? So I got a 4% discount on the special prices, but then again, the hierarchy's taken override and applied that 2% discount. So just something to be mindful when you set up this period discounts and you set up this structure. It's not going to be the lowest price or the best discount given to that business partner. It's whatever data has been populated in the given section. So that 2% discount has been applied to this sales order because of this setup. I've also got under this alloy frame a volume discount of 5, and then it doesn't make any sense, but just to show you how it works, a 1% discount. So we're going backwards. Very unusual, but just shows you how the system calculates pricing. So I've typed in 5, and the discounting is going the opposite way because we've set up this up in the system. So that's a few examples around special prices and all the options around period and volume discounts applied directly to the customer. So we'll leave the sales order open, and what I'll go through next is a feature under the inventory module, price lists, and the discount groups. So this is that next step in the pricing hierarchy. We've gone through special prices. If there wasn't a price specified for that item in special prices, it would go to this area next and try and search if an item exists. So I have a discount group. I can then search for the customer blue zooms. So I have this set up at the screen here of who the customer is at the top, and then I have the structure underneath. And these areas, so we've got item groups, properties, manufacturers, and then items itself. These are attributes that can be applied to a given item. So if you're familiar with SAP Business One, you'll be hopefully aware that item groups are available under the item setup. We've also got properties. You can apply several properties to an item. Manufacturers are also available. But then we have this last option here of items. So if you want to assign directly to a discount group an item that overrides everything else, you can do that. So what I'll do, I'll go through a few examples of how this works. So I've got this group accessories, and then whenever an item is an accessory for BlueZoom, they get a 6% discount. So what we have here is what I can apply is a GPS computer. And what I'll see here is that the 6% discount is applied, making the sale price $411.72, but then I see this price source is updated and it's been applied from a discount group. If I hover over the item, I can see that the item group there is accessories. That's why this particular special price has been applied. So that's pretty straightforward. The next setup under discount groups are these setups around paid quantities, and then you get free quantities as a result. So, buy one or buy 10 and get one free. And that's how I've set up this apparel setup. So you've got a paid quantity, free quantity, and then a max free quantity. So when I buy 9, I get 1 for free. And then the system will then calculate the discount based on that. So let's see that in action. So when I have an item here called a red helmet, and when I pull that through for a quantity of 1, it's just the active price list. But as soon as I apply a quantity of 10, it changes to an active price list volume discount groups, I should say, and then it's applied a 10% discount, because when I pay for 9, I get 1 for free. If I entered 9 here, just something to be mindful of, it won't apply that discount. So you've got to add those two together. So the paid quantity plus the free quantity will then apply the discount. So the customer wants 10, it activates this paid quantity, get free quantity, and then you get the 10% discount. If I then type in 12, the system then calculates the discount based on 12, get 1 free. If I type in 20, it will apply that same buy 10, get 1 free on 20. But then I have this free max free quantity of 2. So this is only going to apply to a maximum of 2 free units. So what will happen when I type in 30, it will stop applying that discount. So when you set this up, you can only get a maximum of 2 free units. So can be a useful tool, especially if you're in retail. You know, see that most retail stores those sort of promotions, so you can set that up in SAP as well. The next one I'll go through is properties. Now, the thing with properties, which is different from the others, is that when you set up an item, you can apply multiple properties to a given item. So I have all these properties behind these items. I've got black and blue, and I've got a city bike here, which I'm going to use. So I've got a discount here for 5 if it has a property of black. And then if it's a city bike, it has a discount of 7. So let's key that in. So I've got a nature city bike, and when it's got a color of black. And what we see here, it's applied that 5% discount, because what you'll see on the right hand side here is the discount relations, and this is how the system will then determine the price when it meets 2 criteria under properties. So at the moment it's the lowest price, so the 5% discount overrides the 7% discount given to the city bike. If I change this, and I'll change this on the fly, to the highest discount, and then I hit update and I type in that nature again, it then applies the 7% discount. So something to be wary of if you are using properties to determine discounting. Since you can apply multiple properties to an item, you need to then figure out, okay, what price I can apply. So those are 2 straightforward ones, the lowest price, the highest price. We've also got the average price. So let's just go through that quickly. So the average between 5 and 7 will be 6. So if I type in nature, it's going to apply a 6% discount because that's the average between the 2. If I then change that to total, it's going to add the 2 together. So if I type this again, it should return a 12% discount, because 5 plus 7 equals 12. The last one is discount multiples. So this is where the 2 discounts will be multiplied together. So I apply this, and it's another nature city bike to the sales order, and it's given it 11.65% discount. So the way that this works, it will go nature bike time, the net price times 5% discount, then times 7% discount, which then gives you this price here. So you can do the math behind the scenes, but that will end up being 11.65% discount. Okay, so that's a few things around discount groups. So you can also apply that to manufacturers and items as well. Really comes down to you know, how you set up special prices aligned to item groups, properties, manufacturers, or is it completely distinct each time? So a few options around that. So that's discount groups. The next level on the hierarchy is the period and volume discounts. So again, under inventory, we have price lists, and then we have this period and volume discounts. Now, this is very similar to what we set up against the special prices behind that business partner, but this is applying it to the price list. So when I have the screen open, I have the first option here to select a price list, and I'll choose retail. Just widen that a bit. We have all the items here, or I can apply items by going down to the bottom right here and add items, which I've already gone and done. And then what we do here is similar to, again, special prices. We can then drill through and then set up a period volume discount for that price list. So this would then apply to all customers or all business partners that have been given this price list, regardless of the special price setup, even though special prices would override this. But if it gets into this level in the hierarchy, it would apply this discount. So let's see that in action. So back to the sales order, I've got a action mountain bike. And what I see here is that it's the $512. It's applied the 5.5% discount, and then we have the period and volume discount price source showing us there. So that's pretty straightforward, very similar to the special price setup, but again, it's been driven by the price list assigned to that business partner. I can also then drill through, and I can then see a volume discount as well. So again, if I go back to action, on the sales order, type in action, and then I type in a quantity of 10, the price discount increases to 10 because I've set up that volume discount there. All right, so that is the pricing structure. It's probably quite a bit to consume. Obviously, you know, it's all contextual to how your business is set up, but this is again just creating some awareness of, you know, these pricing mechanisms that we have in SAP, and then, you know, how the system then goes through the logic to apply that price on a document. So fairly comprehensive, a few options there, and hopefully using these options you can get the right result in your system. So I'll cancel out all of this, because the next section I want to talk about is blanket agreements. So under modules, sales, we have an option here called sales blanket agreements. We also have an option under purchasing called purchase blanket agreements. So what I'm about to go through applies to both sides of the ledger, purchasing and sales. So to keep things easy, I'm just going to go back to sales blanket agreement and look at the setup of one that I've already pre-configured. So I have this blanket agreement here, and what I've done is set up a blanket agreement for BMX bikes for Blue Zoom. On the top here, I specify who the customer is, and then on the right-hand side here, I've got the agreement method where there's two, which I'll take you through both of them, but this one will be items method. And then I have the start and end date of this agreement. So the whole point of setting up a sales agreement is because it's not a one-off engagement. It's a long-term agreement that you have with your customer or supplier. It's typical, like the typical scenario is some sort of call-off. So you'd have an agreement with your customer for the total quantity they want to purchase for a given period, say a year. And then they'll draw down on that over the year and either receive special pricing or just have firm commitment that that stock will be available for that given period. So a blanket agreement can be quite crucial for those organizations that have those sort of contractual relationships or long-term agreements with customers and suppliers. So I've got this agreement here. It spans for the whole year of 2018 year. I've got the signature date, so when it was ultimately signed off, and then we also have to do things as such as give it a description. And this just makes life easier when you're applying items to a sales order to understand which blanket agreement is being applied. You can have multiple blanket agreements assigned to a customer or a supplier. So you've just got to be careful with that descriptor just to make sure that you're applying the right blanket agreement to a sales order, for example. Underneath that, we have options around agreement types. You can have specific or general. Specific means that the content of the sales blanket agreement is not only for quantities, committed quantities or units, but also the price. You have another option there called general, which is only an arrangement around confirmed units that you're going to supply for the year, and then the special pricing or price list that you have set up in the system will take effect. So a couple of options there. Got a big area to fill in remarks, so the whole arrangement that you may have set up with that business partner, and then you've got things such as the status of the blanket agreement, who the person who's responsible for setting it up. And then you also have reminders. So we've got a 4-week reminder here at when we head towards the end date of the blanket agreement. Jack Smith will be reminded 4 weeks prior to that end date. So pretty good tool there. So that's the first tab. Under details, we then populate the content of the blanket agreement. So I have all the BMX bikes set up behind the blanket agreement, and then I see the planned quantity for the year. So I've got this first item here, the Gap BMX bike. I've got a planned quantity of 100 that the customer will draw down on over the year. And then we have a special unit price of $700 for this particular agreement. We also see the cumulative quantity. So this gives me a quick idea of how much have they already drawn down on this blanket agreement. So of the 100, they've already drawn down 1 unit. We see the cumulative balance of $700, the open quantity of 99, and then we see the open balances and a few other areas there. So this is very similar to the setup of any other document, purchase order, sales order in the system, but we're setting up a long-term agreement, and then the system, or the sales blanket agreement, is tracking all of that. So under documents, we can then see all the sales documents that have been referenced to this blanket agreement, and that's how it's doing all its calculations. So if you reference the blanket agreement, and I have a few documents here, we can then see the history. So it's a good tool just to see how you're tracking, and when you're having a regular meeting or catch up with your customer, you can quickly see how they're tracking against what was agreed at the beginning of the year or the beginning of the blanket agreement, and adjust accordingly. We always have attachments, but then we also have the ability to set up recurring transactions behind the blanket agreement. So not only have you got confirmed units and prices, but there might be a schedule that you want to apply when they require those goods and services. So you can set up a sales order to, for example, a sales order, which I've got set up here, and then a recurring template to then automatically create the sales order every week, every month, to draw down on this blanket agreement as a reminder. So a few good tools here if you're if you have a need for this sort of setup in the system. So I've got this blanket agreement number 1, and what I can do just to show you how it works is just go back to the sales order I've already created, and then I'll type in a BMX bike. So I've got a BMX in the order, and then I'll choose a Force BMX bike, and then you'll see the price of that that Force BMX bike is $700, and that's been drawn from the blanket agreement. The way I can tell which blanket agreement is being used, so if I maximize this, I've got a column here called blanket agreement number, and I can see that blanket agreement number 1 is being used at the moment. I can then drill through and see the information. So when I hover over that, I see that header information, a few of the remarks. So gives me that snippet of information. I can always override this. I can remove the blanket agreement. It will just apply the special pricing that we've already got set up in the system, and then it will just act without a blanket agreement being referenced. So that's the blanket agreement. So I can then type in BMX again, another type of BMX bike that we've got set up in the system. So if I go Marley BMX bike, $900, and it's being drawn from that blanket agreement. If I change the quantity, we're just drawing more from that blanket agreement, and then that will call down on that. I see down the bottom there was a message that I've exceeded the amount of units on that blanket agreement, so it's tracking all those sort of things. So if they're only committed to X, and then throughout the period that the blanket agreement's effective for, the system will warn me to say, hey, they've exceeded that blanket agreement. Maybe you need to create another blanket agreement for an additional period. So that's the one way of setting up a blanket agreement, which was the items method. Another one is a monetary method. So effectively everything's the same, but when we go into details, we're not specifying the items and units that have been agreed upon. We have agreed on a value. So if a customer or a supplier, and you've got some sort of long-term agreement, some sort of project, you're a new building, or a new warehouse being constructed, or anything along those lines, you consider a blanket up agreement as some sort of mechanism to track budget against a particular engagement. So what we have here is a planned, say, budget of 50 grand. I see that we've already consumed $3,480 of that, and we have an open balance of that. I can then go to the documents, and I can see the documents that have drawn down on that balance, and it had no indication of, we've got different items here, but since we've referenced that blanket agreements, we're drawing down on that budgeted value. So another way that you can set it up in the system. So a few things there around blanket agreements. So hopefully that gives you a bit of awareness of how blanket agreements can work. And if you have any questions, obviously the setup will depend on site to site and other factors that we have set up in your given system. But something to definitely discuss with us, with the support team or the consultant that you normally engage with to see if it can be applied to you. General workarounds are creating a sales order. If you're not using blanket agreements already, you're probably raising a sales order for the year's amount of units. Maybe you've got different lines for the same item with different delivery dates. That's perfectly fine. It does have an effect on your stock status and those sort of things, but a blanket agreement doesn't. It will still show you the available stock, but then you can then drive things like MRP and use blanket agreements as a source of supply and demand. So it's very good area of the system to investigate to see if it would apply to your system. All right, so I see there's been a few questions being raised. I will probably look at those at the end of this and get back to you individually. If you've got those questions, please just make sure you've got your name there and the organisation that you represent, and then we'll get back to you one-on-one. So that is the end of today's presentation, this webinar. If you have any questions, I'll get back to you through the panel, the Q&A panel on the webinar. Otherwise, contact me directly on my email or contact our support desk on the contact details below. All right, so we'll finish things up there. So hopefully that was useful a useful use of your time today, going through the setup of pricing and blanket agreements. All right, so thanks guys, enjoy your day and we'll speak soon.
Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to learn new smart ways to grow your business. You can also check out our blog and follow us on Twitter to learn more and stay up to date. Thanks for watching and see you next time.